Okay, I'm going to do a couple of things with these functions. So the first thing it asks me to do is f of g of x. Okay, so if I have this as my g of x, all it's asking me to do is where I see that x is I plug in, so 2, I plug in the square root of negative x plus 5, and don't forget that plus 2. Okay, their notation was kind of weird, but that's what this means. Okay, the next thing it asked me for, is this domain. Remember, the only time we care about, like, the domain of this function would just be all real numbers, because you can plug in any number in the world that you want. The only time we care about square roots is we need to make sure that what's under here has to be greater than or equal to 0. The reason why is you can't take the square root of a negative number, but it could equal 0 because the square root of 0 is just 0. So I can solve this by squaring both sides. Remember, when you square what's under a square root, you just get that, and then 0 squared. And so now I could subtract 5 on both sides, so negative x greater than or equal to negative 5. So this is like saying there's a negative 1 there, right? So we could put a 1 right there. When I divide both sides by a negative 1, remember that flips. Okay, so that flips my sign, and so I get a 5. So I know that in this case, and you can kind of, I mean, we went through all this, but you kind of look at it, right? I can see that if I plugged in a 5 up here, okay, that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But, well, let me just do it over here. So if I plugged in a 5 for x, then I actually get my square root of 0. If I plugged in something larger, like let's say a 6, notice we can't do that because we're going to get a negative square root. So what this means is I can pretty much plug in any number all the way up to this 5, and it can include that 5, so hence the square bracket. All right, if I want to do the same thing, and now I want to do it the other way, the g of f of x, and I don't know where to do it because I don't have a clean paper. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. All right, I was a little concerned because that's a mess and I don't think I can get it to fit there. So I want to do the same thing. Now I want to do the g of f of x. So the only difference now is where you see x here, you're going to plug this business in. Okay, so I kind of look at the second is what's getting plugged in. So you've heard me say that anytime I plug in for x, I tend to put it in parentheses, so 2x plus 2, and then when I have a plus 5. So hopefully you can see that got plugged in only for x. And I can work this out. I can distribute this negative sign, so that would be negative 2x minus 2, and that plus 5 is on the outside. So it looks like that would be the square root of negative x plus 3. Okay, so that gives me my composition. Now, once again, if they want this domain, just like the last one, well, we only need to worry 2x plus 3 that this is greater than or equal to 0. Kind of do the same thing I did last time, square both sides, so negative 2x plus 3 must be greater than or equal to 0. I can subtract 3 on both sides, so I get negative 2x greater than or equal to negative 3. Please remember, when you divide by a negative number, you need to flip this sign. I'm going to go over here, so I'll go down below if I can get my mouse to go. So this is going to become x has to be less than or equal to a negative over a negative, would be 3/2. And so kind of like the last one, if I have anything less than or equal to 3/2, then this should work. Now you should always check these. I know, I'm just like you guys. I get a little lazy and I don't check this stuff. But if I plug in 3/2 plus 3, okay, into this composition, that's like saying 2/1, right? So that cancels. So I get -3 plus 3. So check, that works.